I screeched into my Grandma Ruth's driveway in Willow Springs, tires crunching gravel. When my jaw dropped, metal spikes glinted like tiny daggers, stabbed into the dirt right where I'd parked. Not some rusty nails. No, these were jagged caltrops, the kind you see in action movies to shred tires. My hand shook as I yanked my suitcase and a bag of her favorite Dunkin' pumpkin spice donuts from the car, my eyes darting to her sunny yellow cottage nestled among the oaks. This was Willow Springs, a sleepy Sacramento suburb, not a war zone. What kind of psycho plans traps at a grandma's house? Before I continue the story, write a comment below. Where are you watching from? Like if you want to constantly win in any conflicts. Before I could process it, a shrill voice sliced through the afternoon air. Oh, you must be Sarah, Ruth's granddaughter. I spun around to see a woman strutting from the next yard, blonde hair, so stiff it could have been shellacked, arms crossed over a pristine Lululemon jacket. I'm Karen Miller, Willow Springs HOA Standards Queen. Chair. Welcome. Her grin was pure venom, lips curling like she'd rehearsed it in a mirror. I plastered on a smile, adrenaline still buzzing. Hi, Karen. Yeah, I'm Sarah. Here to house sit while Grandma recovers from her hip replacement. Karen's eyes raked over the cottage, then me. Sweet of you. But that yellow? Unapproved. It's been grandfathered in forever, but it's fading now, time for a muted beige. Rules are rules. I blinked at the house. Fading? It looked like it had been painted yesterday, glowing brighter than Karen's fake tan. Fading? Looks perfect to me. I shot back, my voice sharper than I meant. Karen's smirk twitched. Southside's an eyesore, Inspector confirmed it. Fix it in 72 hours, or it's $75 a day. Don't say I didn't warn you. She pivoted and marched back to her hulking gray mansion next door, all sharp angles and zero soul. Her husband, Tom, lurked on their porch, staring, then bolted inside when I glared back. Creepy much? Inside, the cottage wrapped me in warmth, faint whiffs of cinnamon, and Ruth's old quilt on the couch. I dumped my stuff and called her at the rehab center, still clutching one of those spikes. Sarah, you're there. How's my little haven? Her voice was soft but tough, like always. Grandma, what's with this HOA crap? They slapped a violation notice on your door, unapproved color. And I found spikes in the driveway. She groaned, loud and long. Fourth notice this month. First my hydrangeas were overgrown, then my mailbox was outdated, same one since '97. It's that new board, Tom Miller's crew. My gut twisted. Tom? Karen's husband? Yup, she said. He's CEO of Peak Properties. They've been gobbling up lots here, bulldozing cute homes for soulless boxes. My corner spot by the creek? Prime target. My blood ran hot. This wasn't just Karen playing power trip princess. This was war. I've got this, Grandma. You heal up. I'll fight these jerks. Hanging up, I stormed outside. The hydrangeas? Hacked to stubs, not pruned to savagery. Checking the fading south wall, spoiler. Flawless. I spotted more spikes in the gravel for total. I snatched them up with a garden glove, heart pounding. Someone wanted me or Grandma gone. That night, sleep was a joke. Those spikes mocked me from the counter as I scrolled the HOA's 200-page rulebook on my laptop. No paint color list, and Section 11.3 protected historic homes like Ruth's, built in 1951, from new standards. This was a sham. Then, at 2 a.m., headlights slunk past, a black SUV, lights dim, pausing out front. I snapped pics, plate read Peak 1. Peak Properties. They were watching us. Morning hit like a slap. The mailbox smashed flat. Another orange notice stuffed inside. Yard maintenance violation, 48 hours. I snapped photos, fury boiling over. Karen popped up across the street, watering her roses with a smirk that screamed gotcha. Rough night, Sarah? Teens can be wild. Get a new mailbox, approved styles only. I've got a list. I bit back a scream. Thanks, but I'll fix this one. It's vintage. Her eyes narrowed. Damaged mailboxes break rules. Another fine coming. I snapped. When's the next HOA meeting? I'm done with this. She faltered. 10 days. But Tom can handle emergencies. I'm meeting him later. Want me to know? I cut her off, storming inside. I'll deal with him myself. Pacing the living room, I couldn't shake it. Spikes, smashed mailboxes, fake violations. This was a coordinated attack. I needed to face Tom Miller at the HOA office, open today, 3 to 6 p.m., at the community center. But first, I grabbed my phone, voice shaking with adrenaline. Hey, YouTube fam. If you've ever battled an HOA Karen, drop a comment below. I'm in deep, and it's about to get wild. Stick with me. You won't believe what's next. I slammed my car door in the Willow Springs Community Center parking lot, the afternoon sun glaring off the glass doors like it was mocking me. Those spikes still burned in my mind, jagged little threats I'd stuffed in a Ziploc bag now rattling in my backpack. The HOA office was open, and I was done playing nice. Tom Miller, Mr. Peak Properties himself, was about to get a piece of my mind. Inside, the place reeked of new paint and smugness, polished floors, fake plants, a receptionist with a smile so tight it could have cracked her face. HOA office, down the hall, she chirped, barely looking up from her phone. I clutched my folder, violation notices, spike photos, rulebook printouts, and marched on. Through the half-open door, I caught Karen's voice, high and frantic. Tom, she's asking questions, Ruth's granddaughter's onto us. My pulse spiked. Onto what? I froze. You're straining. A smooth baritone cut in Tom, I assumed. Relax, Karen. The fines are piling up, $225 already. She'll crack soon. Peak's got plans filed for that creek lot, $1.2 million payout once it's ours. I shoved the door open, and two heads whipped toward me, Karen, mid-panic, and a guy in a polo shirt behind a desk, tan and smug like a golf course ad. Sarah, what a surprise. Karen squeaked, recovering with a fake laugh. Just chatting about your grandma's situation with Tom Miller, HOA president. Tom stood, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Pleasure to meet Ruth's granddaughter. Sad to see her place fall apart while she's away. I dropped the Ziploc of spikes on his desk with a thud. Funny you mention falling apart. Found these in her driveway yesterday, right after your first notice hit. Tom's smile flickered, but he leaned back, cool as ice. That's vandalism, not our jurisdiction. Call the cops. I smirked. Oh, I did, said they're checking cameras. Thought you'd want a heads up. Total bluff, but Karen's face paled. Are you accusing us of something? She snapped. I slapped my folder down. I'm saying your notices are garbage. Section 11.3, historic homes like grandma's are exempt. This is harassment. Tom's jaw tightened. Board updated that rule last month, notifications are in the mail. Without telling residents? That's illegal, I fired back, thanking the sleepless hours I'd spent Googling HOA laws. Karen stood, clutching her purse. We enforce standards equally, Peak's just helping struggling owners sell. I pulled out my ace, a county property map with Ruth's lot circled, stamped with Peak Properties logo. Helping? You filed plans for her house 3 months ago, she's not selling. Silence hit like a brick. Tom's eyes went cold. Speculative plans. Standard practice. Sure, I said, voice dripping sarcasm. Speculative harassment to force her out. Karen's voice rose. That's absurd. Take it up at the next meeting. Tom leaned forward. Submit a records request, 30 days, per law. I waved a certified mail receipt. Did that yesterday, sent copies to the State Housing Board too. They're curious about patterns here. Another bluff, but Tom's temple vein pulsed. We're done, he growled. Oh, and Ruth's getting a $250 monthly assessment hike next week, corner lot fee. Enjoy. I stormed out, hands trembling, adrenaline surging. This was bigger than I'd thought, a full-on scheme to bleed Grandma dry. As I hit the parking lot, Karen's voice hissed into a phone behind me. She knows too much, speed it up. My skin crawled. Speed what up? I needed backup. Grandma's neighbors had to know something. Driving back, I took a detour down Oak Lane. Same vibe, yellow notices on doors, worried faces peeking out. This wasn't just Ruth's fight. Meanwhile, across town at the rehab center, Ruth sat up in her bed, flipping through a hidden file under her blanket, Peak Properties bank records, photos of Tom shaking hands with shady suits, maps of Willow Springs with red X's. Her nurse popped in. Mrs. Evans, you're looking sharp today. Ruth smiled, tucking the file away. Feeling it too, got a project keeping me busy. She'd been tracking Peak for 18 months, ever since her old prosecutor instincts kicked in after a friend lost her home in Roseville to the same tricks. Tonight, she'd call Sarah, time to spill the truth. Back at the cottage, I barely sat down when a crash jolted me upright. Outside, the porch swing dangled. One chain snapped, swaying in the dusk. Another orange notice fluttered beneath it. Structural hazard, 24 hours. My chest tightened. These jerks weren't slowing down. Then, at 11 p.m., headlights swept the yard again. I peeked out. A figure in a hoodie slipped something into the mailbox and darted off. Hard hammering. I grabbed a flashlight and crept outside. Inside the box? A note, scrawled in black marker. Leave or regret it. I snapped a pic, fury drowning my fear. This was personal now. As I locked the door, my phone buzzed an unknown number. Sarah? This is Linda Carter, live across from Ruth. Don't stay there tonight. They're watching. Meet me at Brew and Bean in 20. I've got info. Her voice shook, but there was steel in it. Info on what? I pressed. Peaks hit 5 of us already. Ruth's their big fish. Hurry. The line cut. I stared at the note, then the spikes on the counter. No way was I backing down. I tore out of Grandma Ruth's driveway. The note, leave or regret it, burning a hole in my pocket as I sped toward Brew and Bean. The little coffee shop glowed like a beacon on Main Street, all warm lights and steamed-up windows against the chilly Sacramento night. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white, mind racing. Spikes, smashed mailboxes, threats. What kind of HOA nightmare had I stumbled into? I parked crooked, bolted inside, and scanned the room. A woman with gray curls and a steely gaze waved me over from a corner booth. Linda Carter, I guessed. Sarah, she whispered as I slid in, the smell of espresso hitting me hard. Yeah, you said Ruth's a big fish. What's going on? Linda leaned in, voice low. Peak Properties isn't just flipping houses, they're stealing them. 5 seniors forced out in the last year. Ruth's lot? Key to their luxury condo project? They don't know who she really is. My stomach flipped. Who she really is? Before Linda could answer, the door jangled. Karen strutted in, phone pressed to her ear, oblivious to us. Tom, she's digging Ruth's kids' trouble. Push the meeting up. She grabbed a latte and flounced out, leaving my pulse hammering. Linda smirked. They're scared. Good. Follow me. We slipped out the back, cutting through alleys until we hit a quaint brick house on Elm Street. Inside, 3 others waited, silver-haired and fierce. Meet the resistance, Linda said. A tall guy with a judge's vibe stood. Frank Harris, retired Superior Court. A woman with a notebook nodded. Nancy Patel, Willow Springs Herald editor. A guy with a laptop grinned. Josh Bennett, ex-cybersecurity, got eyes everywhere. They laid it out fast. Peak infiltrated the HOA, jacked up rules, and drowned folks in fines till they sold cheap. Ruth's cottage was the crown jewel for their $5 million condo plan. Josh flipped his screen, grainy footage of Tom and Karen dumping those spikes in the driveway. My jaw hit the floor. We've got proof, Frank said, but Ruth's the linchpin. She's been feeding us intel. I stared. Intel? She's in rehab. Linda's eyes twinkled. Call her. Now. I grabbed the landline. Cell signals could be tracked, Josh warned, and dialed. Sarah. Ruth's voice crackled, sharp as a whip. Grandma, what's happening? Spikes, threats. Linda says she cut me off. Listen close. I'm not just some retiree knitting scarves. I'm Ruth Evans, senior prosecutor, white-collar crime unit. Been undercover here for 2 years, nailing Peak. I sank into a chair, dizzy. My cookie baking, hydrangea-obsessed grandma, a prosecutor? The hip thing's a cover, she said. They've hit 12 seniors across 3 counties, fake violations, sabotage. I moved here when the pattern screamed fraud. That file box in my study? Evidence, photos, recordings, bank trails. Get it to Linda. A crash echoed downstairs. My heart stopped. What was that? Ruth barked. I peeked out. Karen's SUV peeled away, and the cottage's front window gate, shattered, glass glittering in the moonlight. They broke in. I hissed, sprinting back. Files still there? Ruth asked. I checked the study. Her locked cabinet stood untouched. Yeah, but blue cookbook, 3rd shelf, she snapped. Hollowed out, USB inside. Backup evidence. They'll assume you know everything now. Get out. Meanwhile, at the rehab center, Ruth hung up, yanked her 4, and swung her legs out of bed. A nurse rushed in. Mrs. Evans, you can't. Emergency, Ruth growled, grabbing a cane. Call my team, Attorney General's office. We're moving tonight. Back at Linda's, I clutched the USB Josh had pulled from Ruth's cookbook. My hand shook as Frank unrolled a map. Red X's marked sold homes. Blue circles showed targets. Ruth's glowed dead center. They need 3 more lots, Nancy said. Tomorrow's emergency HOA meeting. They'll vote to seize delinquent properties. Josh smirked, tapping his laptop. Hack Tom's emails, meetings at 9 a.m. They think they've won. Linda grinned. They're wrong. Ruth's coming with the law. We just need them on record confessing. A thud upstairs jerked us alert. Headlights flashed outside. They're here, Frank muttered. Josh checked his feed. Tom's SUV idled at the curb, Karen pacing beside it. Looking for you, Sarah. My throat tightened. Linda shoved me toward the basement. Safe room. Stay put. Downstairs, I paced a tiny space, cot, lamp, files, while upstairs, Linda's voice boomed through the door. Wellness check at midnight? Get lost, Karen. The SUV roared off, but my phone buzzed, a text from Ruth on a burner. Don't trust the meeting, trap. I'm en route. I stared at the USB, the map, the note. Trap or not, we were ready to flip this game. I crouched in Linda's basement safe room, the USB digging into my palm. My breath shallow as Josh's voice filtered down from upstairs. They're circling back. Tom's SUV just at Pine Road. My phone buzzed again, Ruth's burner. Meeting's a setup, stay sharp. ETA 8 a.m. It was 2 a.m. now, and my mind spun. Trap or not, we had to turn this HOA circus into their downfall. Upstairs, Frank paced, his judge's growl cutting through. We crashed that meeting, get Tom and Karen bragging on record. Ruth's team swoops in. Game over. Nancy scribbled furiously, her draft headline screaming HOA fraud ring exposed. Josh grinned at his laptop. Tom's email to Karen, 1:47 a.m., pushed the vote fast. Ruth's kid's a wild card. Too late. Buddy, I've got their whole server mirrored. Linda handed me a coffee, her eyes fierce. You're the bait. Sarah, they'll trip over themselves to shut you up. We mapped it out, 9 a.m., Willow Springs Community Center. I'd play dumb, rile them up, let Josh's hidden mic tucked in a pin, catch every word. Linda's crew would pack the room with targeted neighbors, 5 seniors Peak had bullied. Faces I'd seen on those XD out maps. My stomach churned, but Ruth's voice echoed in my head. They don't know who I am. She was wrong. They were onto something, and I was the loose thread they wanted snipped. At 6 a.m., Linda's landline rang, Ruth, crisp and commanding. Sarah, I'm 30 miles out with 3 AG agents. Stall till 9:15, wear him down. I swallowed hard. Grandma, they smashed your window. Left threats, what if they're desperate, she cut in. That's our edge. Protocol checkmate's live, trust me. Checkmate? My prosecutor grandma was a chess master, and I was her pawn. Meanwhile, 20 miles east on I-80, Ruth leaned forward in a black sedan, cane prop beside her, briefing 2 suits in the back seat. Peaks hit 15 properties, $8 million in illegal gains. Tom Miller's the frontman, Karen's the scout, her husband Brian's the bankroll. We've got wire transfers, deeds, their own words on tape. Agent Carter, a wiry guy with a notepad, nodded. Warrants are hot, HOA records, Peak's office, Miller's home. Just need their public confession for the slam dunk. Ruth's eyes gleamed. Sarah's got the USB, my 2-year haul. They'll bury themselves at that meeting. The driver floored it, Sacramento's skyline looming as dawn broke, the clock ticking down. Back at Linda's, we piled into Frank's old Buick at 8:30, my heart slamming against my ribs. The community center buzzed. 30 residents, half confused, half furious, orange notices clutched in shaky hands. Karen stood at the front, clipboard in her talons, smirking like she'd already won. Tom banged a gavel, his polo stretched tight over a predator's grin. Emergency meeting, foreclosure votes for 6 non-compliant properties. My name shot up first, Ruth's cottage, $375 in fines, $250 monthly hike. I leapt up, voice shaking with fake panic. This is insane. Grandma's house is historic. Your rules don't apply. Karen's eyes glinted. Fines don't care about history, sweetie. Peak Properties offers $200,000. Take it and run. The room gasped, $200K for a $600,000 lot? Tom leaned in, smug. Non-payment means seizure, community standards demanded. Brian's investors need modern homes, not relics. I pushed harder. Standards? You mean sabotaged spikes in her driveway, smashed windows? Karen laughed, shrill. Prove it, kid. Josh winked from the back. Pin mic live. I held up the ziplock of spikes. Cops have this cameras too. Who's paying you to scare us out? Tom's face darkened. Sit down or security. The door crashed open. Ruth strode in, cane tapping, flanked by Carter and 2 agents, badges out. 9:12 a.m. Karen's clipboard hit the floor. Ruth. Tom choked. Thought you were it. Prosecutor Ruth Evans, Attorney General's office, she snapped, tossing her hearing aid, another mic, onto the table. 2 years undercover, 15 counts of fraud, extortion, property damage, all on tape now. The room erupted, neighbors shouting, Karen sinking into a chair, Tom lunging for the exit. Agents blocked him. Warrants for Peak, your phones, everything, Carter said, cuffing Tom as Ruth locked eyes with me. Good stalling, Sarah, checkmate. Linda squeezed my arm, tears streaking her face. She saved us all. The Willow Springs Community Center was a madhouse, neighbors buzzing like hornets, agents wrestling Tom Miller toward the exit, his cuffs clinking as he snarled threats. Karen sat frozen, mascara streaking her cheeks, while Ruth loomed over her, cane tapping the floor like a judge's gavel. 15 properties, 2 years of evidence, you're done, Ruth snapped, her voice a blade. I stood there, heart pounding, clutching the ziplock of spikes as Linda gripped my arm, tears shining in her eyes. You two saved us, Sarah, she choked out. Agent Carter flashed warrants, HOA files, Peek's accounts, Tom's laptop, all confiscated. Nancy Patel's camera clicked nonstop, her Herald scoop already trending. Grandma Prosecutor cracks HOA fraud. Victory buzzed in my veins until Karen's head jerked up, her laugh slicing through the chaos like nails on a chalkboard. You think you've won? You've got nothing on the real player. My chest tightened. Ruth's eyes narrowed. Brian's next, bank records tie him to every deal. Karen's laugh turned wild, unhinged. Check your little USB, hotshot. Brian's hands are clean. I pulled the strings. The room went dead silent. Josh fumbled the USB into his laptop, Ruth's files spilling across the screen, photos of Tom and Brian at a diner. Sure, but Karen's name was plastered on every email, every fake violation. Brian's? Barely a whisper. Josh's jaw dropped. She's not bluffing, his tracks are scrubbed. She's the brains. My stomach churned. Karen, the HOA tyrant, had played us all, shielding her husband, Peak CEO. Ruth didn't flinch. Doesn't save you conspiracies enough. Where's Brian now? Karen leaned back, smirking through her tears. Out of reach, private jet, left at midnight. Cabo's calling, and you'll never touch him. Fury surged through me. She trashed Grandma's life, and now Brian was sipping margaritas? Ruth stepped closer, voice lethal. You just admitted fraud and sabotage. 2 mics caught it. Brian's not dodging extradition that easy. Karen's smirk wavered as Carter slapped cuffs on her, her protests drowned by the click of metal. I was building our dream. You can't do this. I wanted to lunge at her, dreams built on spikes and smashed windows, but Ruth's steady hand on my shoulder stopped me. She's sinking herself, Sarah. Let her. Then the curveball hit. Frank Harris waved a fax from the AG's office, his voice cutting through. Ruth, Brian's jet's grounded. Sacramento executive, 5 a.m., mechanical issue reported. He's stuck. My breath caught. Ruth's lips twitched. Reported by who? Frank scanned the page. No name, just a tip from a burner phone. Timing's too perfect. Karen's face went ghost white, her eyes darting to the door. I followed her gaze. Her son, Jake, lingered there, hoodie shadowing his face, the same kid who'd mumbled an apology at Ruth's yesterday. My mind raced. He'd seen the spikes, the notices. Had he sabotaged his own dad's escape? Ruth caught it too, her voice low. Someone's playing both sides. Interesting. Outside, news vans rolled in. KCRA, ABC 10, lights blazing as Ruth faced them. Comma steel. Willow Springs fought back today. Justice isn't blind here. Neighbors clapped. Linda sobbing into Frank's shoulder, but my gut twisted. Brian was still out there, and Karen's confession felt too easy. Back at the cottage, I paced the living room, glass still crunching underfoot from the break-in. The USB sat on the table, Ruth's voice echoing in my head. 2 years of evidence. But if Jake had flipped, what else was he hiding? At 11 p.m., headlights flashed again. My heart leapt. But it was Linda, breathless. Sarah, Jake just dropped this at my place. She handed me a folded note, scrawled in shaky ink. Mom's lying. Check Peak's old office, 12, Oak Drive. Hurry. My hand shook. What's at 12, Oak Drive? Linda's eyes widened. Peak's abandoned HQ, shut down last year. If Jake's right, she trailed off. We had to move now. I gripped Jake's note. Mom's lying. Check Peak's old office, 12, Oak Drive. Hurry. My pulse racing as Linda and I peeled out of Willow Springs in her beat-up Honda, the clock ticking past midnight. Sacramento streets blurred past, neon signs flickering like bad omens. 12 Oak Drive's a ghost town, Linda said, knuckles white on the wheel. Peak shut it down last year after a tax audit, said it was redundant. Nobody goes there. My stomach nodded. Then why's Jake pointing us to it? She shot me a look. Kid's scared, saw something he can't unsee. The note crinkled in my fist. Karen's confession, Brian's grounded jet, Jake's shifty eyes. This was bigger than we'd thought. We pulled up to a squat, gray building off a deserted industrial strip, windows dark, weeds choking the lot, a faded Peak property sign dangling by one bolt. My flashlight beam danced over a rusted lock on the front door, Linda grabbed a crowbar from her trunk and popped it like a pro. Old reporter trick, she grinned, but her voice shook. Inside, the air was stale, dusty desks, overturned chairs, file cabinets gaping empty. Looks picked clean, I muttered, kicking a crumpled memo dated 2023. Then Linda froze, pointing her light at a back room, door ajar, a faint glow seeping out. My heart slammed against my ribs as we crept closer. A laptop hummed on a table, screen flickering, someone had been here. I tapped the trackpad, password locked, but a USB stick jutted from the side, labeled backup KM. Karen Miller? Linda's breath hitched. Jackpot. I yanked it out, and Josh's voice crackled in my head. He'd mirrored Tom's server. Why not Karen's? We needed his tech magic. As I pocketed it, a thud echoed from the hall, footsteps, heavy and slow. Linda grabbed my arm, yanking me behind a cabinet. A figure shuffled in, tall, hunched, muttering. Should have burned it all. My blood ran cold. It was Brian Miller, suit rumpled, eyes bloodshot, dragging a gas can. He hadn't fled. He was here, torching evidence. Linda's nails dug into me, her whisper barely audible. He's covering tracks. Jet was a decoy. Brian fumbled with a lighter, splashing gas over a stack of boxes. My mind screamed move, but Linda held me back. Then my phone buzzed, Ruth's burner, loud as a siren in the silence. Brian's head snapped up. Who's there? I killed the call, heart hammering, as he lumbered toward us. Linda shoved me toward a side exit, rusted but cracked open, and we bolted into the night, gas fumes stinging my nose. We dove into the Honda, tires squealing as Brian's silhouette loomed in the doorway, lighter sparking. He's lost it, Linda gasped, flooring it. I clutched the USB, Ruth's missed call glowing. Had she known? Back at Linda's, Josh cracked the USB in minutes. Files flooded his screen. Audio logs, deeds, a spreadsheet titled Willow Targets. One clip autoplayed, Karen's voice, smug and sharp. Brian, you signed nothing. Tom's the fall guy, I run the show. Then Brian gruff. If this blows, I'm out. Jet's on standby. My jaw dropped. Karen had set him up, but he'd stayed to burn the proof. Another file pinged. A voice memo, time-stamped last week. They're closing in. Ruth Evans isn't who she seems. I froze. A man's voice, raspy, unfamiliar, not Brian or Tom. Who's that? I demanded. Josh's face paled. Metadata says. James Carter, ex-HOA Prez, jailed in 22 for a scam like this. Paroled last month. Linda's eyes widened. Carter, my husband's cousin. He's out. My phone buzzed again. Ruth, urgent. Sarah, where are you? Brian's not at the airport. AG traced his car to Oak Drive. I stammered. We just saw him. He's burning evidence. And there's a voice. James Carter. Ruth cut me off. Voice steal. Carter's their ghost broker. Links peak to 3 counties. Get that USB to me now. Headlights swept Linda's street. Brian's SUV screeched to a stop outside, engine roaring. Linda grabbed a bat. He followed us. I snatched the USB, mind reeling. Carter, Brian, Karen. What had Jake unleashed? I stood frozen in Linda's living room, the USB burning in my hand as Brian's SUV idled outside, headlights slicing through the curtains like a predator's glare. My breath hitched. Brian Miller, unhinged and reeking of gasoline, had tracked us from 12 Oak Drive. Linda clutched her bat, eyes darting to Josh, who hammered his laptop keys. Sending the USB files to Ruth, now, he hissed. The engine revved, then cut silent. Footsteps crunched gravel. My phone buzzed, Ruth's voice, sharp and steady. Sarah, stall him. AG's 5 minutes out. Carter's the key. Keep Brian talking. Stall a guy who'd nearly torched us? My gut screamed run, but Ruth's steel anchored me. I'd teach these HOA vultures a lesson they'd never forget. The doorbell rang, polite, mocking. Linda nodded, bat ready, as I swung the door open. Brian loomed there, suit stained, lighter flicking in his hand. Where's my USB, kid? His voice was gravelly, desperate. I held it up, dangling it like bait. This? Proof your wife hung you out to dry. Karen's voice all over it, not yours. His eyes flared. Give it, or this place lights up. I smirked, channeling Ruth. Go ahead, cops love arsonists. Why'd James Carter call you last week? Parolee pulling strings. Brian flinched, bullseye. Carter's nothing. Just an old contact. he snapped, but sweat beaded his forehead. Josh's mic pen, clipped to my jacket, hummed, every word live to Ruth. Headlights flooded the street. 2 black sedans screeched up, AG agents spilling out, guns holstered but hands ready. Ruth stepped from the lead car, cane tapping, eyes blazing. Brian Miller, fraud, conspiracy, attempted destruction of evidence. You're done. Brian lunged for me. I dodged, tossing the USB to Agent Carter, who caught it midair. Got it. Carter's name ties him to Peak's shell companies. Brian roared, swinging the lighter, but agents tackled him, pinning him to the dirt as it clattered away. Linda hooped, bat dropping, and I couldn't help it. I laughed, pure adrenaline. Back at the community center next morning, Ruth called an emergency HOA meeting. Residents packed the room, fury replacing fear. Karen sat cuffed in the corner, Tom beside her, both glaring daggers as Ruth laid out the USB's haul. Recordings, fake deeds, $10 million in stolen equity across 3 counties. Karen Miller orchestrated it, Ruth said, voice booming. Tom executed, Brian funded, and James Carter brokered the sales, paroled, and back in the game. I stood up, voice shaking but strong. You targeted my grandma, spikes, threats, lies, for your greedy little empire. I've got something for you. I slammed a stack of photos on the table. Spikes, smashed windows, Jake's note, every dirty trick they'd pulled. This is your legacy. Enjoy jail. Karen's face twisted. You brat. I kept this community perfect. I leaned in, inches from her. Perfect? You terrorized us. Jake saw through you first. Her eyes widened. Jake, slouched by the door, nodded once, then slipped out. Ruth took over. HOAs dissolved. New board election next week. Linda Carter's interim president. Cheers erupted. Linda beamed, Frank clapping her shoulder. Agents hauled Karen and Tom out, her screeches fading as news vans swarmed. CNN, NBC. Ruth's face soon plastered across every screen. Prosecutor grandma topples, HOA scam. 3 weeks later, Ruth's yellow cottage glowed under a crisp November sun. Hydrangeas wild and free, no orange notices to mar it. Brian's trial loomed, extradition papers filed after his jet stunt, while Karen and Tom spilled Peak secrets for plea deals. Carter's arrest followed, nabbed at a dive bar in Roseville. Linda's new HOA banned developer loopholes. Josh wired free cameras for every senior, and Jake mowed Ruth's lawn every Saturday, quiet but steady. Ruth sipped coffee on her porch swing. Fixed now. Watching kids play where Brian's mansion stood empty, for sale sign tilting. Thought I'd retire, she mused. But there's more Karens out there. Might keep at it. I grinned, sprawled beside her. I'm in, law school's calling. She squeezed my hand, proud as ever. Write in the comments what you think. Was it right to treat Karen? Or would you have done differently? Subscribe to the channel to be the first to hear new stories.